So ladies and gentlemen, brothers and guests, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker of the night, Brother Wes Breeden.
Read it just like I wrote it, so good stuff. I don't know how many people dropped out before I got selected for this gig, but I do appreciate talking to the chapter men and the dates and the special attendees we have here today. Makes me real proud to be here with everybody, and it wasn't too terribly long ago we were doing this for the first time, so it's pretty exciting, pretty exciting. When I got the instructions from Shane to come and speak with the group today, there wasn't much, what do you want to talk about, Shane? Success. Okay, well that's a pretty broad topic. So I was trying to go back through my notes and trying to think about, 14 years ago when I was here, what would I want someone to tell me when I was in attendance? And then I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't want to think about what I would want someone to tell me. Maybe it should be what I don't want someone to tell me, because maybe that's what I needed to hear. And so I kind of took that approach tonight, so I thought I'd start off by telling you something that you probably do not hear too terribly often. And this speech is going to go out to my fraternity brothers in the room. So you're not special, not even a little bit. I hate to tell you that. You're not a unique snowflake. I know your mom's probably told you that from time to time, but you're not. Okay? I'm sorry that the marketing campaigns for soft drinks and tennis shoes have told you that repeatedly over the years and years, but you're not. And the quicker that you can realize that you're not special, the quicker your path to success can begin. You don't believe me? Listen to this, okay? Oxygen, 65%. Carbon, 18%. Hydrogen, 10%. Calcium, 1.5%. Phosphorus, 1%. That's your ingredients, and those are my ingredients too. They're all exactly the same. Potassium, sulfur, sodium, magnesium, copper, and zinc. Our recipe goes on and on and on with smaller trace elements, but we're exactly the same. We're not just similar, we're exactly the same. A carbon copy of mankind since the beginning of time, passed down year after year, exactly the same. Have I convinced you yet? No? Okay, just to prove how common you are, here's a quick lesson on the history of the universe. And for our science professors out there and our biology majors, I do apologize because this is a dumbed-down version for business majors like myself. But our universe is literally made up of stardust, okay? When a star explodes, it spews its elements across the vast darkness of space, and they get tossed and turned, and eventually they turn into planets and asteroids and moons and all that kind of good stuff we see, and then they're turned back into stars. And then they're turned into you, and they're turned into me. And what are stars made of? Oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, calcium, the exact same things. Scientists actually say that our bodies are made up of 93% stardust. So think about that. There are more stars than grains of sand on all the beaches on the earth. Okay? Think about that. There are more stars than words ever spoken by every man, woman, and child to ever walk the planet. So, special, you're the most common thing out there. Okay? You're not even close to being special. We share 99% of our DNA with chimpanzees. 99%. Still think you're special? Well, tonight's not about the 93% that we share with the universe. And it's not about the 99% that we share with the chimps. It's about that 1% difference. And think about that 1% difference for a second. That 1% difference is huge. That 1% difference is the difference between using crude rocks and sticks as tools like the primates do. And that 1% difference is what allows us to put a man on the moon, or write operas, or dance like Alan did the other night. That 1% is huge. That's what's given us the internet. I don't even know where the internet is or what the internet is, but I use it every day. That 1% is a pretty big deal. 1 degree is what takes water from going just to be hot to boil and into steam. 1 second is what takes someone from winning a gold medal to not even being invited to the Olympics. And that 1% difference in DNA is what takes us from monkey to man. So that 1% is a big deal. So we've got to learn how to maximize that 1%. I used to never read. You couldn't have paid me to read anything. And now I'm an avid reader. And one of my favorite authors out there is Mark Twain. And he had a quote that said, you know, a person that doesn't read has no advantage over those that can't read. And not only do they not have any type of advantage, we have no way to learn from the successes and failures of men that have come before us. And remember what our history teachers have told us when we were in high school and maybe in college now? If we don't know our past, our future is doomed, right? Yeah. Well, it's true. It is absolutely true. We are doomed. They were right. So it took me a long time to learn that lesson. When you look at some of the greatest people to run companies now, if you look at the Fortune 500, there are several CEOs that are currently leading some of these big companies, that have written in their multi-million-dollar employment contracts that they have to read a book every month. Think about that. Bill Gates, the richest man to ever live, probably one of the world's leading CEOs, well, we know that he is, and now is a world-leading philanthropist, thinks reading that is so important that not only does he post his reading list from every month online, but he writes a book report to tell you about what he read this month. Think about that. The richest guy in the world, and probably one of the busiest men ever, takes the time every month to write book reports, unsolicited. And we say that we're too busy to read. Think about that. It's all about maximizing your 1%. And Bill Gates is trying to squeeze the most out of his 1%, and he's trying to squeeze the most out of his life. He's not yet satisfied. And if he's not satisfied, why are we okay just kind of hitting the bumps through life and getting tossed into wherever we fall out? So it's all about striving to be your best. It's all about maximizing your 1%. And so how can we do that? There are thousands of books out there that are written about the greatest people that have ever lived on the earth. Some of these books can give you tips how to maximize that 1% and avoid the pitfalls that people that have come before us have fallen into. One of those authors is a guy named Napoleon Hill. Has anybody ever heard of Napoleon Hill? I know that if those that have had to work for Mr. Morgan, we read those books, especially when we start out. Napoleon Hill made a living out of interviewing people and studying what made people that could, put people together that could maximize that 1%. He was actually hired by Andrew Carnegie. That's a name most people have heard of, right? Carnegie. And so Carnegie hired him to go to the people that were the most successful in their field and figure out what made them tick, because Carnegie wanted to know why he, someone that came from nothing, someone that had nothing, could end up in the top of his industry, in the top of his world, when people that had a much better start than Carnegie didn't. And it just kind of blew him away. So Carnegie sent Mr. Hill to interview people like Henry Ford and Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Edison and President Taft and Woodrow Wilson and Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt, and people with last names that we've heard of like Firestone and Schwab and Woolworth and Rockefeller, all the top 1% of his day. He entered over 500 successful men and women before he published his first book with Andrew Carnegie called The Laws of Success. And tonight, I brought my copy if anybody wants to read it. It is very well worn, marked, highlighted, and you can go through this. And this is a guy that you could not have paid to read a book while he was at Northwestern or prior to Northwestern. So what changed? I bought this book probably in the first 2 months of leaving Northwestern. What changed? I got bills. That's what changed.
Motivated.
Yeah. I got responsibility put in my lap. I got a job working for a company that paid me according to how well I maximized my 1%. It didn't take me long to realize that I needed help. So who better to go to for help than the most successful people on the planet to ever walk the planet? Remember that game that we play from time to time to say, if you could pick any 3 people to eat dinner with, past, present, or future, who would it be? Anybody ever done that? Well, if you read, you can do that every day. It's a reality if you do that. So what did Mr. Hill find? Napoleon Hill. What did he find? And for you college non-readers like myself, I'll give you the Cliff Notes tonight, okay? He said that maximizing your 1% really came down to 4 things. It came down to 4 free and simple things, and if you get these 4 things down, they might carve a spot out on you for Mount Rushmore, or your last name might become as famous as Gates or Rockefeller. So let's get those 4 things real quick. The first one they found was that you had to have goals. You had to start with your ending in mind. It's okay if you don't want goals or if you don't want to set goals because you'll probably get somewhere, just not anywhere close to where you really wanted to be. There's no coincidence that Mr. Morgan is one of the most successful people because he's one of the most goal-driven people I've ever met. And I can still remember when I was a freshman, and I don't know if you remember this, and the first time I ever had a one-on-one sit-down conversation with him when it was just me and him, and imagine an 18-year-old, much skinnier Wes. Sitting down, and no joke, within the first 2 minutes, he asked me, "Hey, Wes, what's your 5-year plan?"